Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors. I am thrilled that we are in May and it is Women's Health Month. So, what better way to start off Women's Health Month than with a conscious aging workshop? I have Trish Davis here with me. She just got her doctorate, so congratulations, Trish. She's been with the U of A Department of Psychology, and Trish has been running our Women's Wisdom Circle for I don't know, it's been over a year and has also done some other great workshops for us. I want to thank you so much for being here, Trish. How are you today?
I am great. I'm very excited to be here with you folks and you folks at your home. So
yeah. So we do have an online audience watching. Please, if you have this is a more interactive workshop. So if you have responses, please put them into the chat so that we can share those with Trish while she goes through her workshop. And if you have questions, also leave those in the chat and I will ask Trish afterwards. Trish, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can get started.
Okay. Thanks, Maya. So I'm going to go over here in my zone. Hopefully everyone can see me at home here. Hi, yes, my name is Dr. Trish Davis. I am just shy of 58 years old, so I went back late in life to get my doctorate. I'm also a gerontologist, so I study aging. And one of the reasons why I got into that is because I wanted to know how to do it a little bit better. So maybe I've learned some tips and tricks along the way. And yeah, today is going to be a little bit different. When I've come here in the past, it's been, and I'm sure that you folks have been here and listened to lectures. I want you guys to interact with each other and with me. I want this to really be an engaging hour and a half. There's going to be some activities. There's going to be a little bit of meditation. So I'm going to start off. One of my study areas is healthy aging, successful aging, aging well, and wisdom. So I also study wisdom. What is it? How do we get it? How is it developed? And as Maya said, some of you folks have been in the wisdom circle with me, so that's been wonderful. I'm going to start off with a question for you and folks at home. We have Jen over here reading comments, and she'll yell out to me, so you guys are just as engaged as the people here. What is successful aging to you? What does it mean? You're in it, you're aging. How do you do it successfully? Yes.
Pay attention to the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of life. Learning from the past, mistakes, and successes, and then presenting yourself and living in the present moment, because there is no other moment, and getting rid of time and ego. And
what's your name, sir?
I can teach the class.
I was going to say, I'm just going to go. No, we're switch seats because you just summed it all up for me.
Emotions. What else is it? Emotions.
Also mentioned spiritual.
Mental.
Yeah.
You didn't put spiritual.
Yes, and this is so important because really conscious aging.
And that's about breathing. Spiritual is all about breathing correctly.
It's about breathing. It's about also shedding past conditioning and learning about who you actually are truly inside of you without all the stuff that we've accumulated over our entire lives. Yes?
Then grieving all of your losses.
Yes.
Grieving all of your traumas in childhood. Because if you don't do that by 40, you will make poor decisions and choices. And followed by that, Google the empowerment triangle, which is different than the drama triangle.
Okay.
Is class dismissed?
Yeah, like I said.
You can get my book, Eggs to Ashes, and it'll tell you everything.
What is your book?
Eggs to Ashes.
Eggs to Ashes.
Everybody begins as an egg, ends as ash. But what do we do with our dash?
Okay. As I said, sir, you can come and teach the class now.
Very good.
Grieving needs an E. I know I have my PhD, but Lord God, I can't spell for a minute.
You have it spelled right.
I have it. Okay.
Sure.
I before E except after C.
Yes.
Okay. I know I do have terrible spelling. So. Okay. So yes, all of this and more. I couldn't write fast enough, but please, I will tout your book. What is it called again?
Eggs,
Eggs
ashes.
to Ashes. And what is your name?
Lawrence, well, I use another pen name.
Okay.
But you can get it on Amazon.com.
Eggs to Ashes.
Amazon.com. Just put that in
Amazon.eggs
there.
to Ashes. I would definitely buy that. So there are lots of names in the literature and in research for what is successful aging well, activity theory, productive aging, disengagement theory, selective optimization, compensation, you name it. Researchers have tried to figure it out of how we do this thing called aging, especially in the age of longevity, that we are living such long lives, but how do we live it well, even in spite of things that happen, age-related stuff that happens to us. So I was in this training a while ago on conscious aging. And conscious aging is a little bit different than what we think of when we come to these lectures, and I'm sure you guys have heard of, exercise, social connection, eating well, sleeping, all of the things that we do to stay healthy. And those are excellent things that we should be doing every single day to continue to live well in a healthy way. But there's, as he said, a spiritual aspect, and I don't mean religion, I don't mean God or whatever. You identify with if you believe in a higher power, however it is you want to, but this, I'm talking about the spiritual within you. The spiritual within you, and that is conscious aging, of identifying your core self, as I was saying, without all of the junk that we've accumulated over our entire lives, without the identities that we have drug along with us throughout our lives. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's lived in France and Belgium and other places in Europe. He's a high school friend of mine. And we were talking about this, and he said, in the United States, when you meet someone, usually you say, oh, what do you do? Or what did you do in your life? What was your job? And that's our identity for the most part. I was a nurse. I was a teacher. I was a construction worker, whatever it is. He said, in Europe, they don't do that. They say, what are you interested in? What do you like to do? And that's a very different mindset than we grew up with in the United States. And I like to ask some of my old high school friends, who are you? Who are you? I asked you, who are you? And they don't really can answer it. So when I was doing my dissertation and my research study, I asked 92 older adults over Zoom, what does aging well mean for you? They had 4 minutes to answer, that's it. And I really got interested in this because one of the women, she was 84, she lived in independent living. She had just lost her husband, with whom she had been married since she was in college. And she started crying. And she said, I don't know what aging well means because I don't know who I am. And it hit me. And she said, I just lost my husband. I don't know who I am without him. I don't know who I am without my job, the things that I've done, my doing. And I'm going to die not knowing who I am. And it was the saddest thing I've ever heard. And it just really grabbed me. And I said to myself, I don't want to not know who I am. So I also went on a personal journey in this. But I also went on a journey to understand this more and more so that I could, as a gerontologist, share this information on conscious aging. Hello, welcome.
Sorry.
No worries. So there's a book. So you're going to buy Eggs to Ashes, and then you're going to buy this book. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no.
Oh.
What's this one?
The Inner Work of Age. The Inner Work of Age by Connie Zweig. She's a retired psychotherapist, and she is kind of a foundational person in conscious aging. Zweig. I'll put it up here. I just want to point out this book because I'm going to be pulling a lot of my material from this. I did an in-depth training with her and some other teachers of conscious aging. And some of you have been in the Wisdom Circle. We've talked about this book before. The Inner Work of Age. Shifting from role to soul. That's conscious aging. Shifting from role to soul. What have we identified ourselves with throughout our lives? The work of the inner work of older age as a stage of human development is shedding our roles of doing and identifying who we are inside of ourselves, our true selves, and living that, being that. So I have these two cards up here, and I like to illustrate what I'm talking about. So pretty much our whole adult lives, and they're really from when we're little and we start school. Oh,
Thank you.
okay. And what we've been told, we need to do this, I need to do that, I need to da. We're doing. It's our lives, right? But how are we being? Because once we retire, things change. Great, huge shifts and transitions in our lives start to happen. Do we know how to do this without that first? So usually this comes first in our lives, and maybe we can do this. The work of older age is changing these around. Being, and then out of that beingness and knowing who we are, doing that, and our creativity and everything that we are built to be inside. How do we find that though? We could buy his book, sounds like, and I will be doing that. How do we identify who we are? Well, first of all, Connie's Week says, one of the things that we need to do is to identify something inside of us called the inner ageist. And when I bring this up, a lot of people say, well, deny that they're ageist against themselves or ageist against aging. But I can tell you that it starts at a very young age. This idea that aging is not a very good thing, something I really don't want to do, but then we're here and it's like we carry these conceptions, negative conceptions of aging throughout our lives that are put on us by the media, by other people, by whatever it is that you see. Even happy birthday cards in the Hallmark section with these really negative, about aging. Yes.
I think that's a lot of American culture because some cultures respect aging.
That's absolutely right. So there's been cross-cultural research on ageist attitudes. And in Western societies, independent societies like the United States and Western Europe, there's a negative connotation to aging. And in other societies, collectivist societies like in Asia, India, Latin American countries, yes, it is much different. So it's a very good point. In fact, I counter research that I did also with asking 92 older adults, what does aging well mean for you? I asked 100 college age students at the U of A, what does aging well mean for you in 4 minutes? Very different. Basically, aging well means not aging at all. Truly, that How many students said, wear sunscreen so you don't get wrinkles? I mean, I can't, there were so many. And look out, like, for gray hair, and you're gonna lose your memory, you have to go to the doctor all the time. That's what we're taught. So of course, implicitly, deep down, we're going to have these negative biases towards aging. That's the inner ageist. So part of, and now I'm going to shift into, many of you may be familiar with Carl Jung's shadow work. So that plays into Connie Zweig's concept of the inner ageist. And I'm going to walk us through that real quick. It's like we could do a whole year's worth on this. So I apologize in advance that I'm going to just do a brush through. But you mentioned the ego. So Carl Jung was a Swedish psychologist in the early 20th century, and his idea of the human person consisted of three things. It was ego, shadow, and the self. And the work of being human, particularly in this really important last stage of our lives, which truly is you guys, and I'm entering it myself, we are in the most important stage of human development of your life, beyond toddlerhood, adolescent, because you've lived a whole life now, and you are now really digesting your whole life and what that means, what you leave behind in that. And that's where wisdom in Erik Erikson's model of psychosocial development, stage 8, despair versus integrity. Yes.
I call it indigestion.
It can very well, and that may be part of the inner ageist that Connie talks about. So Carl Jung talked about, first of all, the ego and the shadow. The ego and the shadow develop simultaneously, right there together, starting at a very young age. Let's say, for example, you're a boy and your dog dies when you are 4 or 5 years old. And one of your parents says, boys don't cry, dogs die, fuck up. Well, there's some shame to that. That shame and that boys don't cry, that becomes part of the shadow. And the ego is, I need to buck up over this. I can't let my feelings be shown. They're inappropriate. So the ego develops coping mechanisms and guards in life to allow us to put different masks on in certain situations, while relegating our inappropriate feelings, even some would call outbursts when we're young, or proclivity towards art instead of medicine, which we told we should do, whatever it is, into the shadow. The shadow is also where we unconsciously see these negative ideas about aging, even when we're young, and put them away in the shadow, and instead do things perhaps maybe to avoid certain things in aging, whatever. Carl Jung says, okay, this is what is really important for the self, is to integrate the ego and the shadow. Literally like taking a flashlight into a cavern, into all those parts of us that we've blocked away, and shining a bright light on them and say, hello, who are you and where did you come from? And to integrate the ego and the shadow, doing all of this to understand yourself and all of these shadows that have developed and all the egos that fight against them. To develop the self, it's called individuation. That's what he called it. But really, part of the work, Connie Zweig argues, of conscious aging and this last stage of development is truly, really getting down to the nitty gritty, identifying these shadows in ourselves, fears, lots of things, even fears about our own aging. What's going to happen? Am I going to have enough money? I mean, these are realistic fears, but if they start controlling us, then we can't really truly live moment to moment to moment. Part of the conscious aging, and I'm not going to go all into it, but I would just say, part of conscious aging is acknowledging death, mortality awareness. And Ram Dass, who is a really well-known meditator, he passed away not that long ago. He said, death is simply another moment. And you better live this moment right now that you have, no matter what age you are, no matter how you feel inside, because eventually you're going to walk along moment to moment, and then you're in that moment where there's no more moments. And so don't think just because you're older, or I don't want to be a burden, or I don't want to be whatever. Because this is your life still, and you have a lot to give. It's a really important time of your life. In fact, you probably have more to give now than you ever had in your life because of your life experience. And that's part of wisdom. So does everybody kind of get, I know it's like a really short version of that, but that's shadow work. Let's see if I got all my points. Carl Jung also says, aging is a time for the illumination of the self. Again, ask yourself, who am I? Like, truly, who am I? And it's okay to say, I have no idea. I don't know half the time. I'm still figuring it out. But we're going to do an exercise in a minute that may help, I don't know, shed some light, perhaps. There's some very interesting research by a woman named Becca Levy at Yale, and some of you may have heard about it. But she did a longitudinal study over 23 years, and it was on aging attitudes. And she wanted to know, how young are we when we start to have these negative attitudes about aging? And what happens if we have positive attitudes about aging? So she followed a group of people for 23 years, older than 3 years old. That was a different study. But she found that those adults who went on into older age with a positive outlook on aging, despite aging stuff that happens, but positive, it added 7 years to their life. 7 years. However, if there were negative attitudes on aging, that's the inner ageist that we're going to talk about, inner ageist. If there were negative attitudes, there was more incidence of cardiovascular disease, memory issues, and other age-related hypertension. If you had negative attitudes, it really makes a difference. And when I did my study for my dissertation, when we talk about cross-cultural things in aging, one of the things that popped up when I was analyzing my data, and that you see through every single culture, because I did a cross-cultural literature review, is one of the things that people identify as aging well or successful aging is having a positive attitude. Positive attitude, no matter what. And that includes looking at things differently, taking on a different perspective, reframing things, having just a different, outlook that's more positive. So the aim of meeting the shadow consciously, like saying, hold on a minute, ego, get in the back seat. We're going to shine a light here on some of these things that we've hidden deep down inside. And this takes a long time to do. It's not like something I'm just saying we're going to do it. But I'm giving you the structure of it. Meeting the shadow consciously is to develop an ongoing relationship with it. Reclaim a wider range of feeling and action, and gain insight into its deeper meaning. When we make a part of the unconscious conscious, we heed the call to know thyself. Know who you are. So, meeting the inner ageist, which really lives in the shadow, is also forming a relationship with it. Connie Zweig calls it romancing the shadow. And she gave some examples of an inner ageist, like the doer, or the foodie, the one that just wants to eat all the time, or just some negative part of ourselves as we're aging. So I'm going to put up some questions that might help you think about just identifying perhaps this inner ageist. I'll tell you who mine is, and I'm embarrassed. So you folks at home, consider yourself a part of this room, and this doesn't go out of this room. I'll just tell you. And it took me all the sessions of my training to identify her. When I was younger, I was a model, and I lived in New York, and I was pretty. My fear of aging was, like the young student said, getting wrinkles and looking old and not being pretty anymore. And then people wouldn't like me anymore. And that is ridiculous. But that is my shadow. That's my shadow. Because really deep down, I just want to be loved. And as I was growing up, I learned that I was loved because I was pretty. Not because that's probably why I got my PhD at 57, because I failed out undergraduate, honestly. So, Connie, we were talking in a group, and I said, I don't know what to name her, because we name our shadow, our inner ageist. And so mine is Beauty Queen. And so putting aside my ego and bringing my shadow out, and loving that I'm getting older, and loving the way that I look, and really owning that, and knowing that that doesn't really make a damn bit of difference what I look like, because it's in here and who I am. That's what makes a difference. That's what makes a difference. And that is bringing out the true self. So you have a shadow, whatever it is, and we know kind of deep down a little bit what it is instinctively. And then the ego counteracting that, but it's bringing them together, acknowledging, and then owning that in yourself. So that's identifying the inner ageist. So when you're identifying, I'm just looking at my time, okay, the inner ageist, I'm going to put it up here because it's bigger. There are some questions or thoughts that you can, and that pad that you have, and all us folks at home, if you want a pad to write on, take notes, but also for the activity, yeah, there's some over there. You're going to need just a plain piece of paper. It can have lines or no lines or whatever, but okay. So questions for you to identify your inner ageist. Identify, I'm going to say it when I write it. Identify family feelings or any attitudes or behaviors along your life from when you're younger all the way through adulthood that shaped your conscious identity. Like,
Can you repeat that?
I'm going to write it down. Yeah, that's right. Identify feelings, and that, like normally they come from your family or your culture. Identify feelings, attitudes, behaviors that shaped your conscious ego identity. Okay. And then identify feelings, attitudes, and behaviors that were forbidden or repressed. So I'm not going to rewrite all that. identify feelings, attitudes, and behaviors that shaped your conscious identity, that were forbidden or repressed. And then identify the sources of those messages that resulted in shadow making. So the sources of the messages. And you may just look at this and go, well, I got nothing right now. That's okay. You can write that down and think about it later, because this is really deep work. It usually takes many, many months or years. I'm just laying kind of the groundwork to get you thinking about it. So I told you my inner ageist. Connie Zweig describes her inner ageist. She was in midlife and she went to a coffee shop and she saw an old woman that looked like she did not have any money, and she was kind of hunched over and she just looked old and poor. And Connie Zweig looked at her and she said, God, I don't want to be like that. That's terrible. She didn't know who this woman was. She may have been just, had resources, and she's just growing older. And what we do when we grow older is, I've shrunk an inch. We start to shrink, things start happening, and that's just what happens. And she later she identified that older woman as her inner ageist because it scared her. Usually the inner ageist is something that frightens you. I was scared of not being loved because I wouldn't be pretty anymore. But that's really stupid, because honestly, some of the older women in my life when I was little, like my great aunt, she lived to be 107, and my grandmother, they're the most beautiful people to me in the world, physically and otherwise. Beautiful. And I remember feeling that. So it's our own stuff in here that we grapple with. So you don't have to call it out. Just these are things to think about, because when we do our other exercise, it'll make more sense. So in her book, Romancing the Shadow, which is a different book by Connie Zweig, she writes, bringing awareness to our fears to live, romancing your shadow, your inner ageist, is bringing awareness to our fears to live a fuller life grounded in self, because now you've identified part of what your fear is about this whole thing of growing older. When we meet the shadow and romance the character of it, it loses its power. Fear of illness, fear of death, fear of being irrelevant, fear of being a burden, fear of looking older. All of those things are fears that, what do? They rob, thieve us, take away the moment that we're living right now, where we still have so much in us to give, to create, to discover about ourselves, right? So this is the work of doing that. And usually when we're younger, we're just too damn busy to even, know about that. I got no time for that, or no, that's just, this is my identity. This is what I'm doing. This is the time to do this, to reconcile it before we die. Honestly, that is, and die maybe 20, 30 years, whatever, or tomorrow for me or us, who knows? It's reconciling it in this time of our life. And that's part of developing wisdom. Knowing ourselves. So I'm going to read one more thing to emphasize this. So the late poet Robert Bly, B-L-Y, wrote that when we are 1 or 2 years old, we have a 360-degree personality that radiates from us like a globe. And if you have grandchildren or great-grandchildren, or have had children, you know what that looks like. Then we notice that our parents don't like a part of it. They tell us to be nice, so we stuff it away in an invisible bag. At school, teachers tell us to behave, so we fill the bag with other traits and feelings. By the time we're 20, we only have a slice of the globe remaining. But the bag we carry behind us grows heavier and heavier. We spend the first half of life stuffing the bag and the rest trying to get everything out. This is shadow work. All right, so now I'm going to, does everyone have this? Can I erase this now? Okay. And you can also use your, I know that most of you are probably boomers. I'm a Gen Xer and I like write everything down. But some people are like, oh, just take a picture. I'm like, what? Take a picture? Oh, okay. In your phone. Instead of writing it all down. I forget about that. I still write numbers down and stuff like that. Okay. So I'm going to introduce you to now some empirical research-based stuff. And like I said, I also study wisdom. How do we get it? What is it? How is it developed? And I used it in my study, and I have spent 5 years now just really digging deep into it and the research. So we know that wisdom, like if I ask you, I'll just ask you, what do you think wisdom is?
Understanding of life a little bit.
Understanding.
Awareness.
Awareness.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Not making the same mistake twice.
Learning life lessons. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So we, pardon?
Understanding yourself.
So we know pretty much what it is. We've learned that from our culture and from just, exemplars in society, like Martin Luther King Jr. And these are the typical people that come up when they ask, name it, wise person, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, those kinds of people. So in 1981, there was a grad student named Vivian Clayton, and she was interested in what this thing called wisdom was, because it had been around since Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Cicero, you name it, and Buddha, and so on. So she and her mentor, James Beeren, wrote a paper on a study they did on trying to figure out what wisdom was. So they asked over 200 people. They were young people, middle-aged people, and older people, what wisdom is. And so they gathered all of these words, like you guys were just talking about, and they analyzed them, and they kind of clustered them into 3 main groups. And they called them the 3 domains of wisdom. And some of you, if you've seen my lectures before, this is going to be a repeat. But so we have, first of all, we have the cognitive domain of wisdom. And that's more like Aristotle's pragmatism, knowledge, the fundamental pragmatics of life, good reasoning, sound judgment. Really important to wisdom, very important. And then we have something called compassion. Having empathy for others. Being able to understand where someone else is coming from. Putting yourself in their shoes. This, by the way, these 3 domains have been tested over and over and over and over again since 1980, and they still ring true. And pretty much in I've done extensive literature review, and these 3 pop up consistently. And there's one cross-culturally that pops up consistently, and it's compassion and pro-social behaviors. But there's one that really rises above them all. And that is called reflectivity. Know thyself. That is why. So in Erik Erikson's his 8 stages of psychosocial development, he came up with these in the 1950s. the last stage, number 8, is reconciling despair versus integrity. And integrity is really making peace with your life, understanding like life lessons and experiences, letting go of resentment, letting go of regret. Despair is the opposite of that, of not doing that, of hanging on to things, unforgiveness. The quote unquote, I'm going to do an collective inner ageist thing now, grumpy old person. But reconciling that, despair versus integrity, produces a virtue. So all of his 8 psychosocial stages of development, if you reconcile these conflicting things, a virtue comes about. The virtue there is wisdom. So really, truly, knowing yourself, self-awareness, self-forgiveness, self-understanding, being able to know and identify your shadow. What are my fears? Why am I afraid of that? What is it holding me back from? Even if it's like, possibly a realistic thing that may happen, am I going to live in the shadow of the fear of that? Understanding that about yourself and forgiving yourself for it. Forgiving myself for being a vain whatever. And I mean, just ridiculous. It's and owning it and saying, no, that is not who I am. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? So researchers argue, particularly one at the University of Florida, Monica Ardell, and she developed the first gold standard of measuring wisdom in psychological research, the 3-dimensional wisdom scale. And she said, if you don't have, these are all interactive, by the way, you pretty much need all 3 in order for there to be wisdom, according to the research. But she said, if you don't have this, if you don't even know who you are, and you can't have self-awareness, and you can't say, you know what, that was a wrong reaction to that. Why was that? Let me figure this out. Then it's difficult to make sound judgments and good practical reasoning about things and understand human behavior, including your own. And then it's difficult to have compassion for others because you can't even have compassion for yourself. So this is really, really important. Okay, the next little thing I'm going to draw over here is, I like to call it the trifecta of healthy aging. And this is based off of my research dissertation, but really lots of aging research over a long period of time. So I'm just going to call it healthy aging. We know that this can be a lot of different words, but it can be healthy aging, successful aging, whatever you want to call it. So up here we have anything to do with keeping your health up. Exercise, sleep, taking your medications, all those good things that really are so important. I mean, walking every day, very, 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 very important to do. And then we have what you're doing right now, social connection. Social connection actually feeds into health because we know from research that if we are being social with others, we have a healthier brain, we have healthier bodies, so on and so on. Social connection, extremely important. That's why loneliness and isolation can take years off of your life and is such the Surgeon General called it an epidemic in our country because it really does affect us physically and mentally. And then we have this last one over here, and I named it before as part of the cross-cultural phenomenon of successful aging for everyone is positivity, positive attitude. And one day I was messing around with this and I was really thinking about this and I looked at these 2 things. And I really thought that, okay, with reflectivity and wisdom, if we're thinking deep about something, we're identifying our fears, and we're being self-aware, and we're thinking about our life lessons, and we're reframing things and really taking the negative out of aging, then really these two things are connected. Because loving, forgiving, understanding yourself can really help us have a positive attitude about whatever may happen. We go to the doctor next year and the doctor says something, but we have something within us that's bigger than our physical selves, and we understand and know ourselves, we can then adopt a positive attitude. And what does that result in? Resilience. And of course, they all interplay, but when you think about it, knowing yourself and your fears, and instead of saying, I can't do that, well, there are lots of things I can't do anymore. I've had 4 kids and I'm in menopause. If I ran across that room, it would be ugly. For lots of reasons. There are lots of things we physically can no longer do, but you change that. You don't say, I can't do this. You say, well, what can I do? One of the women that I interviewed for my study used to hike and do all kinds of things, and she was in her late 80s. And she said, I can no longer hike. I can no longer physically do X, Y, Z. But you know what? I took up quilting, and I took up, I think it was like this quilling and this paper thing or something. And she said, I love it. She said, it is, I've met a whole new group of people. I've learned how to do something I always wanted to do. And that was really, I wrote that down as an example of understanding, accepting, self-acceptance of me right where I am right now today. And then adopting a positive attitude about whatever that is. What can I do? Builds resilience. I can do pretty much anything I want to, that I'm able to right now in this body that I have right now, because I'm still breathing, I'm still alive. Someone asked me, what about people with dementia? And if you're thinking that in your mind, I also worked with a lot of dementia patients. And that's a whole different story. But I will say that there's still a sense of self, because I've worked with so many of them, and they still have a sense of self. It just looks different. It's expressed differently. That's all. So it's something that's in you, no matter what. All right, now we're going to go on to our activity. So folks at home, if you could get out a piece of paper, preferably one with no lines, but if it has lines, that's okay. Just like a regular size piece of paper, and a pen or pencil. I mean, this is like we're going to go back to school now. We're going to do a little fun little thing. Here, I can go. And I think you did this. Folding piece of paper.
Yep.
Yeah. But I switched it up a little bit. So all right. For you at home, if you have any questions or you're like, what is she doing? Just let Jen know over the comments and our hopefully explain. All right, so we're going to take our piece of paper and hold it up. You're going to fold it in half. You're going to hold it up again like this. And you're going to fold it in half again. Like you're making a nice little homemade birthday card for someone. A little square. Okay. Okay. Then you're going to fold it in half again. Then you got like this rectangle. And just one more time. We probably can't do it after this. Just I wanted the teeniest little tiny micro book here. Okay. So now we've got our little square. And I'm going to write down some prompts here. And I'll explain them in a second. What we're going to be doing is creating a life map. And the purpose of this exercise is to bring awareness to your life, identifying feelings, reactions, unresolved issues, or resolutions, interconnected moments to witness the evolution of ourselves. So lots of times when people say, we're going to do a life review or life, it's chronological, I was born this, I went to school, nope, we're not doing that at all, no. So you're going to answer these questions on each of these, and for each decade of your life, but I'm going to put these up here first. So did you have an aging influence in your life? And we're going to do it for each decade of your life, good or bad. Here we're going to kind of see if there's any inner ages developing. What are major transitions? You don't have to write necessarily what they are, but how did you feel? You can write, and these are tiny little squares, so write a word that represents it or a feeling that comes up about it. How did you feel? Feelings. Were there any major trajectory shifts in that decade? Something huge that happened. Did you grow? Have insights, life lessons? How did you feel? Or did you maybe ignore it? So we're really trying to identify the journey of our life. Can I erase this? Did everyone take a picture or whatever they needed to do with it? Okay. We're really trying to identify, I talked about your inner self. The inner self is how you feel about something that maybe was unexpressed or you couldn't express it or you still feel it. And who influenced you and how you reacted to trajectory shifts. And think about that decade in particular, not, oh, that happened in that decade, but this is how I feel about it now. No, in that decade, how did you feel about it? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We have, let me get a pen. We have a little square. We're going to write on one side of it a number 1 in the corner. Number 1 in the corner, okay? On one little side of the square. So number 1 is ages 1 through 10. And I know it's a tiny little square, so you don't have to write a lot. If feelings come up, if an event like moved, say move, or moved, like if you moved houses, whatever. If a loved one died, whether it be a grandparent or an animal or dog or pet or a parent or whatever it was, you can put that person or animal's name. And then if you had an aging influence, grandma, grandpa, /good/bad, But really think about how you felt. And I know that's hard because it's a long time ago for me too. But something may come up. Are the folks at home doing okay? Okay, good. It's hard because it's really easy for us to list off things that we've done, doing. Yes?
Do you want us to write on this square what our aging influence is? What are the major transitions and what is the
So
trajectory?
this is an idea. You don't have to do each one of them. What I'm looking for is ages 1 to 10. If anything happened in those ages that you remember that was like, wow, that was important to me. How did you feel about it? You can name one word. Your feelings. Yeah. If there was a grandparent or an aunt and uncle or a neighbor or someone who was older and had a good or positive or negative influence on how you looked at aging, maybe their name and if it was good or bad. I'm just trying to drum up feelings within you from that age. And you don't have to, definitely there's not room to write all of that, but yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to, you have the number 1 here and you've just written some words. We're going to just flip it over to the other side that's blank. You're going to write a number 2 in that corner on the blank side, okay? So for the side that says number 2, you're going to think about ages 11 to 20. Same exact thing. Did something happen? How did you feel? We will not be sharing these, by the way. This is for you. Sometimes when we think about our feelings in that, they may be feelings that were pushed down or that we didn't feel like we could express at the time. That's shadow. If you think about shadow and ego, maybe you can even think about how you coped with things. Ego's not bad. Ego helps us. Ego's good. But it can be negative when it prevents us from actually feeling what we need to feel. So I know some of you may still be writing. That's okay. You can go back to it. So we have 1 and 2 now have words. So now we're going to open up where you have writing on one side, 1 and 2. You're going to fold it so the words are hidden now. And you have 2 blank pages again. On one of these, you're going to write number 3 in the corner like you did 1 and 2. Number 3 is the next decade, ages 21 to 30. Starts to be a very busy time of doing careers, families. And these questions are a guide. Think about your life. What happened? How did you feel? And then we're just gonna, you have 3rd decade, you're just gonna flip it over to the blank side, write number 4. And I try to give a little more time as each decade goes on. Ages 31 to 40. I feel like that was a blur for me. But I know what I was feeling. Completely overwhelmed.
Is this in preparation of our obituary?
You're creating a map of your life. Yeah, obituaries, that's a good point. So-and-so did this and they accomplished that and they did this. But how do they feel? Who were they really? Who knows? And I recognize it did for me, it can get a little bit emotional, and that's okay. We're here and together, and we are taught not to cry in public and not to express our feelings. You can do that. It's a safe space. You can feel whatever you want to feel.
Hard to remember when it was the 30s or 40s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you just finished number 4. Okay, we have our little book. And you can go back to it. I'm just going to show you what we're going to do next. So you're going to open it up. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side, and the other side is blank. Okay. So you're going to take this side that's written on, and you're going to do just what we did earlier. You're going to fold it down on itself, and then fold it again into a little book. So you now have 2 blank sides again. So you have the written sides, all writing, and then no writing. So the written side, you're going to fold it over, and then you're not going to see anything, it'll be blank. You're going to fold it over again. Yep. Okay. On one of the corners, you're going to write number 5. Can anyone tell me what's next? 41 to 50. Like I said, this starts to get a little hairy. I'm just going to ask, is anyone here 90 or over? Anyone older than 90? Any of our friends online? Older, 90 or older? I just want to know when to stop. I've had groups where they're,
Yeah, I'll let you know if anyone.
Okay, I've had groups of 90 plus.
We've had some over 90
Yeah.
classes before,
Yeah,
so.
you do. You have such.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Again, you're looking for feelings and maybe a word or two to what happened or who in your life. You're excavating your inner self, your shadows, the things you don't usually want to think about because it's part of who you are. You can continue to write on number 5, but if you want to just flip it over to the blank side, put a number 6 in the corner. Right now we're all getting the hang of it. And number 6, and the age is 51 to 60.
was just thinking about people who have feelings. So I look back at these people, just a journal. Wow, it's not, I just have to search. You can say generalize the word. Sometimes it's hard to identify specific things. Whatever you feel, you keep going in a generalized way. You don't have to be dramatic. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. But once you identify feeling, and you think about that, really think hard about that, then sometimes other things, you know, when you look at the stars at night, first you can just see the common ones, and you get the very hard.
Okay, you can keep writing, but, so we have our 5 and 6. So we open up the book, 5 and 6, turn it around to the blank side, fold it over on itself, so you have a little book again that's clean with nothing on it. On one side, you're going to write 7 in the corner. And that is your 7th decade, ages 61 to 70. Okay, we may still be writing, that's okay. So now you're going to take your little book and you're going to unfold it. Now you're writing on both sides, okay? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
We didn't do it.
Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, you did do 8. I have 8.
I already did.
Just flip it over. You did 8. Okay. Because you knew where to go. Okay. Sorry about that. 71 to 80 is number 8. Yeah, just flip it over from 7. Yes, and then there's 9. Yes. We're doing 8 now. And if you stopped at 7 or 6, so, you can go back if you want to. And some of you are still writing, that's okay. Since we have no one over 90, we're going to go through to the last. And so you have 7 and 8 open up. So now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on one side, and the other side's completely blank. Right? This is maybe how it's going to work, but anyway. So fold the written part over on itself. And then fold it again. And you already have these creases, so just follow the creases until you have a little book again. And then we're going to write a 9 in the corner of one of these little sides. And since no one is over 90, this will be our last little square. Again, if you want to go back and write any other things that came to mind, feel free to do that. You just have a couple more minutes of this exercise. Okay. And you can take this home and go back to it if you want. Open it up all the way to where you have all the writing. And you should have some blank area. So now you can, this is your personal life map of not what you did, not your doing necessarily, it could be, but your beingness. The things that we don't normally talk about, except to people very, very, very close to us. But who could be closer to you than yourself? You got to start with yourself, exactly. This is starting with understanding and knowing all the messy, beautiful stuff inside of us. So look at it and see if you can identify the same feelings that may have been popping up, or is there a pattern in how you related to something or handled something? You may not have written it down necessarily, but if you look through all the decades, maybe you can recognize something about yourself that you don't normally really think of. And so that's going back to, can erase this. So we go back to the psychosocial stages of human development. And we're still developing as human beings. It doesn't stop at childhood and adolescence. We're still developing. We can, neuroplasticity, we can still create new neural pathways in our brain at any time. Foregoing severe pathology like dementia. And we can create new things. Like if there's something that you always wanted to do, but you never did it. When I was younger, I failed out undergraduate, like I said, but part of the reason why is because I wanted to be an actress. Like I really wanted to be in theater, but I couldn't sing. So I wanted to be in movies. And I was in the theater program at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And my dad was like, well, that is just not practical, Trish. Yeah, I mean, do you know the percentage of people who do not make it? You need to go on and do something else. And I didn't like doing something else. So I was like, but guess what? And I'm the acting, not like acting, I'm play acting, but I am performing. I am up here talking to you and expressing myself to you. And it's a form of what I know is innately deep inside of me that I buried for so long. In addition to added to my love for teaching, my love for learning. I may have failed out, but I love learning. I'm not the dummy everybody thought I was, right? Who is it in you? Who do you see on your life map? That little girl, that little boy, or those feelings inside of you that were inappropriate and you couldn't express in some way, shape, or form. I'm doing it through teaching. How can you do it? How can you just acknowledge those shadows, join together with the ego, okay, and develop our whole self? That is the work of inner age. And that is why this is the most important stage of development of your life. Because you have the wherewithal, you have the experience, you have the maturity to do this work. And let me tell you, when you do it and other people meet you, they see it in you. And you leave a mark. And the obituary might look a little bit different. I don't know. So, all right. Oops. That is your life map. And you can go on and work on it later if you like. But yeah, a lot to think about. And I encourage you to get this book and Eggs to Ashes. To wind up, we're going to do a short little meditation. Let's see.
Battery 60%. Connected to the Richard Kessler's icon.
Okay. So, if you want to just get in a comfortable position with your feet on the floor. I don't know if we can turn off one light or just. And maybe your hands on your lap. And you at home, just get comfortable in your seat. Okay, that was a lot of emotion probably. Just roll your shoulders back. Roll your head around. Put one hand on your belly and one on your heart. This is the yoga part. It's just breathing. You can have your eyes closed or just a gentle gaze in front of you. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Take a deep breath in through your belly, expanding your belly and into your chest, and hold at the top for a moment and let it out like you're blowing out the candle. Long and slow till everything's empty. Take another deep breath in. All the way, fill it, fill your lungs, hold it until you can't anymore and let it out. Long and slow, blow out that candle. We're going to start our meditation. Imagine you are walking through a gate into a garden. And this garden represents the life map you just created. And there are separate little gardens along the way for each decade of your life. Some are still blooming. Some may be covered with weeds, forgotten. Some maybe you forgot what that little wildflower looked like or the smell. And you can smell and see that now. Maybe there's a garden with weeds that you want to kneel down and pull a few. We'll walk to another decade of your life, a garden, and pick a flower or even plant a seed. A seed of forgiveness, a seed of recognition, a seed of self-love for whatever hurt you experienced in that decade. And you're walking through the garden, and in the distance you see a very large tree. It can be any tree you want, a mesquite tree, an oak tree, and you see two figures standing on either side of the tree holding hands. And as you get closer, you can recognize one as your child self, maybe 5, 8, 10 years old. That little boy or girl smiling at you, because that little boy or girl completely recognizes themselves in you as you're walking towards the tree. The other person standing is your older self, older than you are right now, much older. And they're holding hands. The little child bear is still inside of you, and the older person is inside of you, yet to be born, yet to come, yet to experience, yet to express creativity. And they're holding hands because they are still one person, as you are one person in them. And as you walk closer to them, they walk closer to you and grab your hands and embrace you. And your little child self says to you, thank you for taking such good care of me along the way, and I want you to know that I'm still here for you, and I love you so, so much. And we can still do great things together, you and me. Remember, I'm still there. And the older person hugs you and says, yeah, we're going to do great things. And I'm here for you. And then you step back and you all smile at each other, knowing that you are one self. Ego, shadow, all of it. It's beautiful. And as you walk back through the garden and you look at all the decades of your life, know that you can revisit it. You can clear out weeds. You can plant new seeds. You can get to know who you are at every decade of your life. You open the garden gate, you close it behind you, and you are now back in this moment, in your beautiful self. This is a safe space. You are a safe space. Take a deep breath in, filling your belly and your lungs, and blow it out all the way. And take one more big breath in, and blow it out. We are 2 minutes over. I apologize. Yes. Sorry, folks, we're 2 minutes over, but there.
No worries. Thank you so much, Trish. I want to thank you for being here. I did want to just ask, can you repeat the names of some of the books that you mentioned earlier and any ones that you might recommend for people that, if they want to dive deeper into this topic that was discussed today?
Sure, yes. I'm going to write them down. First, I'm going to write Eggs to Ashes. Our friend's book here in our audience. The main book that I use for this work, from whom I had my training, is Connie Zweig's The Work of Inner Age. By Connie Zweig. There's another book called Conscious Aging, Conscious Living. By Ron Peavney. And finally, I would recommend From Aging, and it's spelled AG-ING, to Saging. By Rabbi Zalman.
Great. Thank you for that. That way, if somebody is interested in learning more information, they have it here. And so I know I had put a couple of things. I know I've mentioned Connie's book in here in the comments already. You can find it also through Shifting from Role to Soul, as you had mentioned. I think you gave the proper title. That was sort of the subtitle that I was able to find. So, Trish, I want to thank you so much for being here. You have been a part of TMC for Seniors for a long time. I know you're getting ready to move, and so
Maryland.
for a new teaching opportunity, which is amazing. Maybe we'll be able to get you back on at least hybrid for something in the future. We're hoping so. And I know they're going to miss you at our Women's Wisdom circle as well. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to wrap up with our online audience and turn it over to any questions you might have in person.
Thank you, Maya, so much.
Thanks so much for being here today. We hope that you'll come back and see us again. Our next talk is actually going to be next week. It is Wednesday, May 14th, and that is going to be for pelvic floor health, understanding common issues. Wednesday, May 14th at 2 p.m. With Samantha Johnson. She is our physical therapist over at the TMC Adult Outpatient Therapy. If you are interested in this class, please give us a call. Our phone number is 520-324-1960. We'd be happy to get you registered for that class or one of our other upcoming classes. Thank you so much for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you again.